Welcome to the podcast where something is amiss, something is a mess, and we'll discuss some things MS, multiple sclerosis. This podcast is meant to tell the stories of those living day to day with MS, from before they were diagnosed, getting that diagnosis, the aftermath, and where they are today in their journey with multiple sclerosis. And now, let's get on with the show. Welcome to Some Things MS. Good afternoon and welcome everybody to this episode of Some Things MS. This is actually the first episode in a podcast that I'm creating to tell the stories of folks living with MS, folks that are supporting people living with MS, and then want to pepper in some other fun guests along the way, like folks who are either working for the society, people who are doing research, just any guests that I can find that's going to add value to the conversation around multiple sclerosis. And so, uh, decided that I would be the guinea pig to start this podcast off. So I'll be interviewing myself, much like I would anybody else on the show. So again, welcome. And basically, I'm going to get started and talk a little bit about my journey with MS. And so, just to give you a little background, I was born on the East Coast in Virginia and lived there for about 30 years before moving to Colorado. Moved out here in about 1999. And up until that point, hadn't really had any major health issues, had been working out and exercising pretty regularly, pretty active, running in various 5Ks, based on the job I was doing at the time. We sponsored a lot of them with water donations. So I was constantly just kind of looping myself into them. And got to Colorado in 99. And I would say sometime around 2002, had what I would consider my first inkling of there being an issue. I didn't know it at the time, much like many people, in this situation with MS, um, don't get that diagnosis right away. They don't know those symptoms are, and they just kind of pass over them. And so I had some numbness in my shoulder and right arm. Went to the doctor. They sent me to a rehab facility here in Colorado, the Stedman Hawkins Clinic, and they said, "Yeah, let's do some rehab." So, learned some exercises, did some rehab, and after about a month or two, it got better. And so we figured that rehab paid off, and that was 2001 or 2002. 2003 again had a very similar issue with some numbness. Ended up going to the doctor again. They decided this time to do some electrical stimulation. So I did a couple of treatments around that, and again, kind of subsided. So they thought, okay, the blockage or whatever it was has gone away. Didn't really do much past that point. So again, pre MS, I was pretty active, exercising. At this point, had two young kids, one born in 1998 and one born in 2000. So my kids were just about 4 and 6 when the next episode hit, and this was just around January of 2005, 2004. Sorry, and just kind of had again a recurrence of this numbness, but also this time it came along with some weird feelings in my right leg, not complete numbness or loss of power, but just more like I called it at the time. I thought perhaps it was like more like restless leg syndrome, and it turned out this started on like a Thursday. I didn't sleep Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. Um, and by Sunday, just thought I just need to go get this checked out. I don't know what's going on. So made a doctor's appointment. It was for much later in the week. I think it was a Friday. Went to work on Monday feeling just completely out of sorts. Just really couldn't think straight. Um, the numbness that continued, the uncomfortable feeling in my legs, just what I would now describe as a buzzy feeling. Just kind of was making life a bit uncomfortable. Just still wasn't thinking anything serious, but just definitely not feeling myself. I work in IT, so at the time doing a lot of programming, a lot of project-based stuff, and I knew something maybe was up at that point, especially when again I had attributed it to perhaps lack of sleep. I was just not able to concentrate at all on my job. I would be in meetings and sheepishly go to my boss or whomever was leading the meeting afterwards and just ask for a recap again because I just, really wasn't taking notes. I just didn't comprehend what was happening. And so just, got out and got back to my desk and realized I don't even know what I'm doing here. Let me go back and try to get this situation rectified. Again, fast forward a few days to my doctor's appointment, just with my general practitioner, um, explained kind of where it was, what I was feeling. She did some cursory numbness testing on my arm, with a little tapping here and there, and strangely enough, didn't immediately decide, oh, we send you to rehab again. I mean, she kind of softly said, I think you should see a neurologist. I think there might be something else going on here. I don't think this is a nerve blockage. I think you should see a neurologist and have him pursue other possibilities. So I did that. This was in January of 2004. Went to see the neurologist. He listened. By this time I was starting to feel a little better. Um, he listened and said it could possibly be a few things, but before we give it a name, let's do some further testing. So they scheduled an MRI. Um, Went to get the MRI of my brain and spinal cord, and just after that, had what I would consider a more full on MS episode. My entire right side went numb, back, face, trouble talking, some vision issues, really bad cognitive issues, and just general lethargy, just no energy, no, just very very tired and for no reason at all, not having done anything. Um, and so now I've had the MRI, I've had the what I would consider the first major episode that's brought on all these symptoms. And it wasn't too long after that, within a few days, that the doctor called, said, "Come on in. Want to talk to you about the results." Got there and he, said the words that anybody in my position living with MS has heard. You have something called multiple sclerosis, and here's the evidence of it. Proceeded to walk through the MRI results, the different what are called lesions, which occur in an MS attack. So in MS, generally what happens is your body is attacking itself, and the white blood cells eat away at the myelin on your nerve cells, which is this covering, this sheath that covers them, that protects them, and it eats away at this. And the best way I heard it described was like a roadway, a system of roads, and you can just picture these lesions as potholes. The larger, the more of them, the harder it is to drive down this road. And this is what happens in folks with MS. Your brain sends out signals through the nervous system, and because of these lesions, those signals don't get to where they're supposed to get, or they get there interrupted, and your body doesn't act the way it should. Um, but to be sure, they wanted to do another test, which is called a spinal tap. They pull fluid from the spine looking for a certain indicator. Um, and so said, sure, yeah, let's definitely do that. I want to understand, for sure that this is what we're dealing with. And did the spinal tap. When you do a spinal tap, you have to rest the rest of the day. So I was home resting, and just totally unrelated, but thought it was related, had a panic attack. Um, Not sure. I wasn't really stressed out over the diagnosis. I wasn't dwelling on it. There was no anxiety built up around it, but something in my body knew that perhaps I was holding back. But it was just around bedtime, around 9, 10 o'clock. I just was kind of in a mid sleep and woke up in a complete panic, my heart racing, ended up at the hospital. They verified it was a panic attack, gave me some medication to calm myself down, and sent me home. But you know, the next day the spinal tap results came in, and it definitely was MS. So um, that was kind of my pre and up to my MS diagnosis journey. My immediate reaction, I've heard a number of different scenarios from folks I've talked to, from the flat out, I don't want to believe this. I'm going to ignore it, to the, completely, broken down, emotional side of it. I'm fairly pragmatic, but I would be lying if I didn't say that, I was really concerned about my ability to continue my life as it was. I was just, again, 2004, there weren't as many resources as there are now when it comes to multiple sclerosis. I mean, there's so many great. If you haven't been out to the MS Society website, whether it's the main site or your local site, you got to go and check out the navigator. You got to check out all the resources that are out there, the local groups that are out there, peer groups. I mean, one of the first things that I did when I got my diagnosis was look to find where I could go and talk to somebody about this. And luckily, there's an organization here in Colorado called the Rocky Mountain MS Center, and there was a lady there that was just instrumental in helping me process all of this and get the right resources and start to learn about the disease. Because a lot of what you see, what you saw back then was just this really, to be frank and blunt, just negative, outcome. You're going to be in a wheelchair. You're not going to be walking in 10 years. This is a major disease that's progressive, and so just that's one of the the downsides of living with a neurological disease like this is that I'm still never quite certain when something might occur, when an attack might occur. It's not like it's always there. It can be dormant, and I can have really good positive days where I'm feeling great. And then, you kind of learn over time what your body's doing and how to control that and when you might expect your body to react a certain way. And so my initial reaction was certainly fear. I had 2 young kids, a wife, just bought a house, a, a burgeoning career in IT, and what's this all going to look like in a year if I can't walk, if I can't think straight. My job requires a lot of brain power and coding, and so there's all these things swirling around, and I don't know if I felt like this all my life, but I know in that moment was something of a singular definition of, I'm going to learn everything I can about MS, and I will own it, and it won't own me. And that's just was something I set in that lower foundation at that moment, and it stuck with me. I mean, it was one of those things that I just, for me, it was a pretty immediate, great start Googling or Yahooing or whatever browser was out at that time, um, and learning everything I can. Got lots of pamphlets, like I said, connected with a peer group of folks going through this. Um, Connected with the right physician. I didn't stay with the initial physician that I got my diagnosis from. It just wasn't a right fit. So, something to keep in mind there if you're newly diagnosed or even in the middle of your journey with MS, if you're not getting what you need out of your support team, don't be afraid. This is your life. This is your situation to make changes when you need to. And so I found the right neurologist that fit my needs at the time, one that I stuck with for over 20 years now, and sad he's retiring, and looking for my next good fit in that physician area. So yeah, right after I was diagnosed, kind of hit that ground running. I mean, the other notable thing that for me was something that I'll never forget is, again, I was pretty physically active, working out every day, um, at the gym, 5 days a week at least. And at the time, I happened to be doing a routine that required I was doing a lot of just body weight exercises, a lot of push-ups, pull-ups, things of that nature. And so it wasn't uncommon for me to go in and on my pull-up day to do 35, 40 pull-ups at a time, in sets like that. So when I went back to the gym for the first time after my MS episode in January of 2004, I wasn't able to do one pull-up. And so, for folks who don't have MS and wanna know what that's like, the feeling not just physically, but emotionally, mentally when you've got a disease like this, I went from doing 40 pull-ups, my body was not any different after a month. My muscles were all still there. Nothing around that changed, but my brain couldn't tell my body, my muscles to work properly, and therefore I couldn't do a pull-up. And that really just hit home. Again, it's something I'll never forget. It's something that helps me illustrate the disease when people ask me how it affects me. And it still affects me in that way, not quite as deeply now. And unless there's a major episode, it's just flare-ups. And I'll talk a little bit about those in a minute here. But generally, again, that was another point of resolve that I just said, I don't care if I can only do one pull up. I'm going back to the gym every day until I can do one, and then I can do two and four and eight, and you know, and, oh, so on and so on. That was my kind of my metric, um, that I had, prior, and that I was going to attain to. So it just helped again build that resolve in me, that foundation of just facing this head on at every stage, not knowing what that might be even. Um, I went on a medication, a couple right away out of the gate. Both of them failed for me, unfortunately. That caused major concern because, at the time, there were 4 basically 4 injectable medications that were available to me and folks like me with MS. Just the remitting relapsing version, people with progressive MS and, primary progressive did not have similar options, at the time. We've come a long way. Talk a little bit about that later too. But at the onset, decided to try to take some of this medication that was meant to help stave off future episodes, and just had some pretty violent and reactions, and had to move off of both of them, and then made the hard decision to take a more holistic approach and not take any medication. Something I discussed every visit with my neurologist, starting from the first, time, the first visit after I stopped the medication, and then every visit after that. We always talked about the advancements in medication and whether or not I would be taking one, or just kind of what that looked like. And as the years went on, and as I continued to fine tune my routine, I got more comfortable, even though I knew that at any moment my body could change and something could change. And that was a risk that I took, at the time. Again, with the information I had at the time. Had it been today with all the different various medications and treatments that are out there, I think I would have made a different choice based on the odds. But at the time, chose not to medicate, and just went with exercise and diet, and just really fine tuning the understanding of my body and what I knew and would learn about what would trigger, what are called flare-ups, which is really just a strong recurrence of your episodic symptoms. So for me, a flare-up could mean difficulty in speech, spasticity in my hands and arms mainly. So, just picture cramping all the time at the slightest movement, despite doing, the best job at staying hydrated properly. It just didn't matter. The spasticity is there because of the MS. Um, you know, being tired, just, out of the blue and all the time. Um, I learned that drinking alcohol was a major trigger for me. Even the smallest amount, is a trigger and can create a flare up in symptoms. And so, just kind of started taking all this information and putting it together in kind of an internal, log, so that I would, better understand my body, better know how to control the symptoms and the outcomes, and better make choices when I needed to. I've talked about this a lot, and you'll likely hear the analogy of spoons out there, like how many spoons a person has during their day to give to a certain activity. And so I definitely think about this in my life. If I want to stay up late, I know that I might have to sacrifice an entire day on the weekend to recover. When I do the Bike MS bike ride, it's a 2-day, really a 3-day event that's grueling. It's 150 miles, um, and it can be in the, extreme heat, extreme cold. I've done them all, and that usually takes a week at least to recover fully. Not just physically. Usually, I'm pretty physically in shape for that, muscle from a muscle standpoint. So it's not like sore muscles, but it's just the uptick and the rise in the symptoms. So, you know, back to that restless leg symptom, which causes lack of sleep, which just compounds the issue. It's a long recovery period for me, when it comes to the MS piece. Um, and just going backwards again, just to make a point about the diagnosis, I was lucky to get a pretty quick diagnosis. There are, if you're out there and you have MS, the diagnosis period can be quick. It can be excruciatingly long. I know people that took years, multiple years to get diagnosed properly so they could actually really start, affecting change in their life. I was lucky that mine came down in a couple of months, so I was able to really hit the ground running and figure out how I could best proceed. Um, I still, one of the things that I talked to my neurologist a lot about was the fact that I was exercising prior to that. I mean, not, it's hard, you can't go back in life, obviously, but if just as a general note in the world, definitely, pay attention to your exercise regimen. Get out there and do something, walk, stretch, do yoga, even light weights, anything you can do to stay active can help you and will help you in the long run. Even just as you progress from an age standpoint, your body is in better shape. You're going to be in better shape as you start to age on. And if for me, I truly believe, and my neurologist believes, it was a saving factor in my MS progression. I mean, where the lesions are in my brain and spinal cord, um, the neurologist consistently would say how amazed he was at the fact that I wasn't as affected as he thought I should be based on where the lesions were on my paths. So, he attributes a lot of that to exercise and my recovery as well. So I continue again, I, talked about it before. I went right back to the gym, and you do this in a safe way, obviously. If you've got ambulatory issues, or, issues with balance, you don't wanna go and put yourself in harm's way. There are plenty of great, instructional, videos out there on YouTube. There are folks that can help you out in the society with resources to help you find the right exercises for you. Ask your neurologist, "Hey, is this safe for me?" You likely know your own body, but don't do nothing would be my advice. If you've got the ability to push yourself, from an exercise and activity standpoint, do the best you can. It really, even if it starts with that one, 5-minute walk or 1-minute walk, whatever it is, start it and see where it goes, and get yourself in that routine, because it's so important to your overall health. And again, I couldn't, stress it enough for MS health as well, keeping your body limber and keeping yourself ambulatory as long as possible. I mentioned, getting involved right away. I mean, I wouldn't say day one, but it wasn't too far after that. Um, got involved with the MS Society, joined the MS Walk here in Denver, Colorado for a number of years, was on the planning committee. Really appreciated my time doing that. Saw the effect it had, and all the folks that joined for that walk, folks who had MS, who didn't have MS, all there to raise money and awareness for not only research but care, locally. And now, I mean, we've turned from, when I was diagnosed, to having just four medications to having dozens of medication options for folks who are diagnosed, all the way up through people with progressive MS now. And we're not just talking about the next best medication to help stop attacks. We're talking about reversing the effects of MS and the eventual cure. That's the horizon now. The horizon has changed in the last 20 years, and it was just an amazing thing to see, this happen while I was watching, and to feel as if I've had an effect on that by fundraising for the MS Society. And then later on, through the Bike MS event, which, strangely enough, I learned about through some childhood friends, folks I'd known from kindergarten almost, who had been riding this Bike MS ride back in Virginia, where we grew up, for years. And they invited me. I mean, they knew I had MS now. They invited me back to Virginia to ride this ride. So I said, "Yeah, that sounds great. I should do this." So I bought a bike because I hadn't ridden a bike in forever, and just got one off of Craigslist, this old steel frame special specialist, and spiffed it up, painted it, got it in good shape, and shipped it out and rode my first Bike MS out in Virginia, 150 miles out in Middleburg. And it was hooked at that point. It was a fun event the whole weekend. Again, you know, even larger crowd of people just out there, for one cause. Just it was infectious. And it turns out that just down the street from me was somebody I went to high school with briefly, but knew well, and we reconnected. He was riding the Bike MS ride here in Colorado on a team, and he said, "You should ride with us." And so I did a couple of bike rides a year after that for a number of years before shifting most of my focus here to Colorado. And and boy, what an adventure this has been. Again, like I said, we've had warm days and cold days and blown tires and crashes and lots of laughs and lots of tears. I was talking to somebody recently, and one of my favorite things to do on Bike MS on day 2 is to just sit at the finish line and watch people come across, and just to gauge the emotion. I mean, there are people coming across that I've seen 1,000 times that are still emotional. There are people who are coming across their first time, and they're just overjoyed at being able to finish an event like this. Folks with MS, folks without MS, the people there cheering on. I mean, just so much energy, good energy that, I couldn't imagine not doing this event in some capacity. Even years when I haven't been able to participate fully because of my health, I'm still there, as a cheerleader for the team, for the folks that are doing it. And just so much money has been raised. And proud to say the team I'm on, we just crossed the $1 million mark as a team. Personally, I've raised over $100,000 through just an amazing set of, friends and family and strangers even, donating on my behalf to the fundraisers that I put out there. Um, so again, I can't, stress enough that if you're out there and you've been diagnosed or you're not involved and you want to get involved, there's so many ways to do so. If you can't ride, it's totally understandable, you know, but you've got so many people out there riding for you, walking for you. If you're looking for a positive way to get involved, Bike MS, Hike MS, Walk MS, these are all great events that you could take a look at, and get on a planning committee, get on a cheer committee, just the more I felt, the more I got involved, the easier it was to deal with this disease and to stay on top of it. It led me to here. I've in my personal life and professional life, I've been doing a podcast around a business system, and enjoyed it so much, just talking to people about things that we're passionate about, and thought, this is just another topic that I'm passionate about, and wanted to get this podcast going. So um, am happy to share my story first on here. We've got some great podcast already recorded, folks that I know in the MS community. Looking forward to some other great podcasts around folks from the society who are supporting, who can pass on some great information. People who are doing research. Like I said, I'm the main focus are on people who are living with MS, but want to keep a well-rounded view on this, and give everybody the opportunity to get some good information and an upbeat, positive, and orange way. So I appreciate you joining me here today. I'm again happy to start this conversation up, and I'll end with the way I'm ending all the podcasts, and that's a rapid fire question about this is around Bike MS. So if it's a Walk MS, maybe these translate some to some degree, but in any way, this is specific to Colorado Bike MS. And so the questions I've been asking are: if you're out there bike riding, you're looking for energy, is it goo or is it gummies? And for me, I mean, I did the goo to start with, but I love the gummies. It's like eating candy. It's like you're eating candy on a bike ride, except it's doing your body some good. So I will go with gummies all day long. How many jerseys do I have? I talked to somebody who'd done like 30 rides, and they're like, well, 30 rides, one jersey for the team, one jersey for the Bike MS, one jersey for our ride MS, the passport, just the counting of the jerseys. And I would say I've got to be over 60 at this point with the number of rides I've done, and all the extra jerseys that come along with doing them. So got a lot. Uphill or downhill. So um, with my body frame, I weigh about 125 pounds. Going downhill is not my bestest friend. I'm not getting up a lot of speed, and plus, I'm a bit of a scaredy cat when it comes to going downhill. So I'm definitely an uphiller, if you want to call it that. I do a little better going uphill, and I'm not wearing my brakes out. And then finally, we've been lucky enough to have a great national sponsor, a team that has, they actually field teams around the country. It's a Left Hand Brewery, which is located here in Colorado, and they do a beer garden here for us at our ride for the day one ending event. And so I always ask everybody what their favorite left hand beer is, and for me, for the longest time, it was a beer they call Good Juju, which is a ginger beer, really crisp and light, a great summer beer. They did one for specific to Bike MS called Wheels Goes Round, GOSE. And outside of that, and this has been across the board so far, the stout, the stout, the milk stout. Um, so had to get those out of the way. And again, thank you for joining us. Stay tuned to this channel, and and look forward to sharing a bunch of great stories with you coming up here pretty soon. Thanks again, everybody. Take care.